why doesn't he like her? Oh, because she's ruining his life, right? Because he's so much in love with her that by not being able to do anything about it, he's in a mess, you know. So, and I think the first line is something like, you know, neither can I make war or peace, right? So he's just in this turmoil because he can't do anything. He's totally hung up. And I guess I feel like, for me, and I mean, much of what you did was lovely, but for me, I think there's much more turmoil in it. And I think even the quieter and even the slower parts still have this feeling of, I'm very unsettled, you know, and even though I might be talking softer, but you know, like that, there's just something about that. So there's very seldom, in my opinion, anywhere that's really calm. It's all in this kind of hyper-aware condition. You know, right away here, you play very quietly, but I don't know why. It says crescendo, and here, forte. I want to talk about something much more mundane. We'll come back to that. This is a question for everybody, I suppose. How do you know how to sit at the piano? We have a picture over here in your note. What's the best place to sit?
On the front half.
Okay, front half of the bench. You're not really doing that. Front half of the bench. So I'm going to sit right here. Okay, so I prefer to sit up here, right? So I know it's a comfy padded bench, right? But if you sit back here, I'll tell you in a minute why that's not such a good idea. So sit in the front half. And then what about how far away from the piano to be? What do you think? How far away? I think you're too far away. Why do I think so? Now, by the way, you can't ever really tell somebody else how to do this. So, you know, I'm telling him where I think he should sit. But all I can do is observe. This is something you really have to find yourself in your own body as to where exactly to sit. But I think there are certain things you can say. And one thing I'm going to say right now is that when I see somebody playing so that their upper arm is always extended forward, then that's bad. Why is that bad? Because in order to extend your arm forward, and you can feel this right now in your own hands if you've got enough space to do it, in order to pull your arm forward, you're flexing some muscles here that you cannot unflex. So I'm going to start out down here. Okay, I'm starting out, my hand is just hanging here. Right? Hanging down arm, right? Absolutely nothing. Gravity's just holding it down there, nothing. Now I'm going to use some muscles, and I'm going to bend at the elbow only and raise the forearm. Now, I've used some muscles to do that, of course, I have to. But feel what happens inside your arm when you now go forward. I think you can feel there's something happens up there, right? I'm not going to explain it to you anatomically because I cannot, but I can feel that it happens. And I can also tell you that if you play the piano like that, then those muscles will always be flexed like that. You cannot relax them because just holding your arm there is necessary. So you need to find a place to sit. And I think the first thing is if you move forward on the bench, right, you may also have to move the bench. I don't know, it may feel uncomfortable. A lot of guys have trouble with our pianos because you can't get your knee under the key, you know, the edge of the keyboard. That could be a problem. In this case, the piano's on a riser, which further complicates matters because the keyboard is actually about 1.5 inches higher than it really should be. So that's a real mix-up thing, too. In this case, I think it's also not level, but anyway, that's something else. So I want to sit in such a way that I'm basically not using any more muscles than I need to get my hand onto the piano. I would like this to be a square corner. So that has something to do with how high I'm sitting, right? I think your height may be sort of okay. But I think that if you get used to practicing, you know, in a very comfy way so that you're kind of sitting far back on the chair, and, you know, like most pianists, we're sort of slumping our shoulders down, or sort of going like this. And, you know, well, what's the problem with this? Well, the problem is we've impeded our ability to move around, and we've also affected the sound. And that's the little thing I'd like to do. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, okay, so now you still have to sit closer. Don't move the bench. You move forward. Move forward. Move forward. So it's not comfortable anymore. Yeah? This is better. Okay, play not that. That's hard. Let's do this. And can you play here really? Like it says, what is it? Forte cantabile. So at least that level. instant change, and I can't fully explain why it happens. You know, one of the unexplored mysteries of piano playing is that we still don't really understand much about how different gestures of the hand and body affect the sound. A few people have tried to study it. It's pretty murky territory. And some of the early studies that were done 100 years ago, you know, were sort of the findings went in the direction of suggesting that you couldn't do anything to affect the tone. So there was a famous guy named Otto Ortmann back in the 20s, and his work compared the sound of making one note by striking it with the tip of an umbrella or Arthur Rubinstein's finger, and on his oscilloscope he had, you know, an analog oscilloscope that you had to connect up to a huge battery, and it looked the same to him, and he thought there was no difference. And then other people have come along later and suggested that maybe it's not so much the sound of one note as it is the sound of more than one note. There is the issue that everybody's hand has a specific weight, and so just by hitting the piano, you know, you can't hear that, but there's a little sound, a little percussion sound that becomes part of the tone. And so, you know, your hand weighs a little different than mine. Of course, when you start to use the pedal, that really changes everything. So, you know, what is the mystery of the pianist's tone? I believe, you can use your own experience and tell me whether this is true. When you hear 5 or 6 people, or however many people, play the same piano, you tend to notice that it sounds different. It's not the way they're playing, okay, that's different too. But the actual physical sound, it seems to change. And does it really? You know, that's the question. So I think it does, and I think that if you set yourself up in this way so that you're not always doing that. That old picture of Brahms, right? It didn't sound good, you know, like don't. Some things. So let's do this part again. This is interesting. He says forte for the right hand, piano for the left hand. I don't think I really got that, but what if you did? Even a little more. Do you dare a little more? The hardest part for me is that somehow I want to erase all these accents. So on the left hand, I really want to feel for the whole measure, right? So I don't hear you better. And then I think I actually want, maybe that's too much, but I want some bass presence. Because I feel like the point of that pedal marking is that I'm actually creating a relationship between this and that, right, in every case. And this is significantly less, but yet it is resonant. Serious about that. What is he serious about? It's a repeated note under slur. Dee, and I heard you play dee, ta, tom. So it's the big difference, right? The slur in a classical piece, an 18th century piece, would have ended there. Dee, team. Of course it would have, but it doesn't now because this is romanticism. Tee, It's also a matter of piano building, right? Because on the really old piano, you didn't have the possibility of repeating. Piano, you can repeat a note legato. So do it, right? One more time, right there. This is good. Can you do the first measure? That was good. These can be, I think, a little more daring. Rum, ya. Somehow the arpeggio is part of the jump too, right? So it's not rum, da, but yomba. I think the sound of that word, whatever it was. Can we go back to this now? Can you play once without the 8th note? Just play the upper line once with octave. Right. And that feeling of the beginning where he says, you know, I've forgotten exactly, but he says, you know, just like I can't make war, so I'm not a peace either. Da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da. It seems weird that the last note of the group has always got the accent, right? Should be the other way around. Da-dee-da-dee, ta-dee-da-dee. And it's a condition of anxiety, right? Haven't you ever spoken to somebody like that? You know, I think what you did is so unbelievable. I can't imagine, you know, like the emphases are all in the wrong place, right? Because you're just crazy. And also because you won't stop talking because you don't want them to say anything. So, da-dee, 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 I think you have to. So that note, you know, all it says in the list is I see there's lines and then there's an accent mark. But because I realize that that's kind of the end of the phrase, it's particularly odd for it to be more, right? What about the sound of the first one? So is it possible to still hear the F sharp when you play this after you finish those two? Yum, and then I still hear it for a little bit before you continue? All right. I think, so I want to actually hear the chord change. In here you can do it, right? Then go on. And then I think it also has an effect on the rhythm. You know, when I was speaking as I was to them before, I was so angry. Da-dee, 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 da-dee. Is that note the same length? I don't think so. It's you know, what is it? 15 milliseconds longer. It's a little longer. I don't know how long. 15 milliseconds. What is that? Do you know anything about that? So actually, most musicians cannot hear the difference if notes are varying by 10 or 15 milliseconds, thousandths of a second. Most musicians can't tell the difference. There's some stuff online you can test yourself. It's really interesting to see whether you can, you know, what the increments are. It's funny because in terms of out of context, I believe that might be true. In context, however, you know, when you start editing recorded sound, as you will or have already, you would be surprised what you could hear. You know, even 1 or 2 milliseconds, you can't say, oh, it's 2 milliseconds longer, but you can say, there's something wrong. There's something imbalanced about this. Or on the other hand, this note should be longer. I mean, it's the main thing pianists have, really. I really said that. More than tone, more than anything else, time, the management of time. It's what we have to make expressive music, I think. So I think that note can be a little bit longer. Don't be locked into the quarter notes. Do it one more time, sorry. There's no, oh, you're right. Okay, so there's no line on the first one. There's never a line on that one. Okay. So can I hear da, ta, da, ti, da, ti, da, ti. So I get 3 different things. No line, 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 accent. Say it loud. Chi, I think so. It's slow, but nobody said it's soft. Go. Keep going, keep going. Yeah, stay on the piano though. So when you have this piano, right? The trouble with this piano is that in order to get enough sound in places like that, I think we're tempted to come off in the air, and then it sounds so noisy.